Ever since my daughters were little, I would tell them bedtime stories every night. One night during our bedtime story adventures that we would do, we got to telling this pretty wild tale.
That's right, this book really did keep me up till midnight. And I actually thought it was better than its predecessor.
I would just make up stories off the cuff, maybe riffing on familiar fairy tales or bedtime stories.
This trilogy can be placed among giants like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
I am writing the climax of the entire series as we speak. I'm pulling out all the stops.
I think both these books have insane potential for their age.
I don't want to leave anybody disappointed.
And I have high hopes for the third book that will complete the Fallen Trilogy.
There's a lot I have to say about this book. First of all, is this not the best freaking cover art you've ever seen? Anka Gabriella, you have earned my respect yet again. Keep up the good work. Hey everyone, I'm Kellen Stevens, and the time has finally come for me to review the third and final installment of the Fallen Trilogy, Lock of the Flame. There's a lot to unpack with this one, so get ready for the ride as we discuss everything from the experience I had with this book to the unreal culmination of the plot, and finally, the sum of all the events that were flawlessly tied together in this conclusion to the Fallen Trilogy, and maybe some extra awesome sauce just for kicks. First and foremost, I just have to say, everything, and I mean everything, about this book is amazing. I can only tell so much, but I can say that the character development brings the heroes and the villains to their highest points. The sheer contrast of each character's maturity and demeanor from when we first meet them to when we last read of them is astounding. With some of them, I could hardly tell that they were the same person, some for good and others for bad too. Maggie demonstrates great responsibility over new powers given to her. Luke shows his loyalty and devotion to the Guardians, and Lucy even grows to be less abrasive. Well, minimally. It really depends on who she's around at this point. Now, a lot of the questions that I had from the first two books were answered in this story, but it leaves just enough ambiguity for speculation, as do all good stories. Now, I'll go ahead and say this. I reread the first two books before reading this, that's 3 times total for each, and by the time I'd finished Scourge of the Fallen for the third time, I was amped up and fully prepared for all the awesomeness packed into this book. As with Shadow of Arceus, I stayed up past midnight when I was reading this. It was like 1:07 in the morning when I finally closed the book. And I can say with confidence that this is the most thrilling book I have ever read. I mean, I had seen Return of the King just a week before, and I got more excitement reading this. That's how amazing it is. Okay, gotta calm down. I must say, the entire trilogy has a very well written and extremely cohesive plotline. Every event in the trilogy as a whole leads up to an insanely intense and extremely powerful climax. It didn't take me long to realize Mr. Martin meant what he said about writing this part of the book. Remember this?
I'm pulling out all the stops, so I'm trying my best to throw everything plus the kitchen sink in there. I don't want to leave anybody disappointed.
He wasn't kidding. Not in the least was he joking or exaggerating. Now this book did something similar to Shadow of Arceus, where the first half of the book is relatively calm, but then the action really starts rising at chapter 8, once again in the Haven of Plimpkins. While this part of the book was actually quite brutal to read, it would have been far worse if Mr. Martin had not foreshadowed it in his interview. I hope you're not too emotionally attached to fictional characters, because some of them kinda go... Yeah, it's intense. Now it's here that Maggie receives her mission for the story, and from this point forward, the intensity steadily rises to an all-time high for the rest of the book. While we're on the subject of the plot, I want to point out that Lock of the Flame is one of the great stories to have a split climax plot. To briefly explain the concept, a split climax usually has a more epic and intense climax for the plot, but a more meaningful and emotional climax for the story. If you want to learn more about a split climax plot, there's a video by Just Right that explains it way better than I ever could. The link's in the description. I won't go too in depth with this so as not to spoil the book, but I will say that this was the best split climax I had ever read. And seeing as I had both read and watched Lord of the Rings, that's saying something. This book does a truly fantastic and absolutely mind-blowing job at tying everything together for the end of the trilogy. Even the characters themselves know that the end is in sight, as shown by this quote on page 155. Everything is falling into place, just like tumblers in a lock. All that's happening right now is predicated on the fact that it must. What has come before had to. I think this quote really drives the point home. Many, if not all, questions that were aroused in Shadow of Arceus and Scourge of the Fallen were answered in Lock of the Flame. As usual, the meaning of the subtitle is clarified, and I must say, once I did read the meaning for Pierce the Darkness, the story felt truly complete in my mind. A certain act of treason was explained, an unexpected trait was revealed about an already eccentric character, and the overarching conflict of the entire story was resolved, but with just enough room for the sequel to be written. You heard me correctly, the sequel. The prophecy given by Violet Viltusha, it was Violet, right? Anyway, it was fulfilled. Shoot, now I gotta find it. The prophecy given by Violet Viltusha was fulfilled. The blooming relationship started in the first book was brought to its peak, and the protagonist, my favorite fictional character, Maggie Bennett, achieves her full potential as her might is raised to its maximum, a level of sheer power that, in my opinion, eclipses that of her ancestor. As you can see, I'm trying to describe the cohesion of events without spoiling it for new readers. I'm giving it away without actually giving it away. I must admit, there's a veritable plethora of parallels spread throughout this story that I can't mention here without seriously spoiling the book. But I'm sure you will all find yourselves absolutely exhilarated when you discover these amazing cross-references for yourself. Let's talk about the awesome sauce for a minute. There's some really cool stuff in this book. There were a few things I knew in advance that I really wanted to see from this book. As for my expectations, when I read this book, much to my surprise and gratitude, it met pretty much all of them. The first thing I speculated was that a certain enemy would be returning in this book, and while that did turn out to be true, the manner of their return was not expected at all. It was literally jaw-dropping. Now, I really enjoyed reading the Battle of the Stone, so I was hoping to see an epic battle at the intense climax of this story, and I must say, it was a literal duel of fates that took both figures to their most crucial points, both as opposing characters and as skilled fighters. As I'd watched the relationship of Maggie and Elliot grow from a sarcastic teenage girl and an oblivious blunt bird for a sidekick to a maturing young woman and a valiant, loyal hero for a friend, I longed to see an intimate and almost romantic affection between the kindred and her totem. Mr. Martin portrayed it perfectly. Exactly what I wanted to see. I kid you not. 10 out of 10 to you, my favorite author. Nearing the climax of the plot, Maggie and Elliot are given a moment to fully express their love for one another that they fostered over the years. It's beautiful. That's all I can say about it. It's beautiful. It is this single moment that has truly claimed my admiration and my adoration, so that I can call this my favorite part of the whole book, and thus my favorite part in the entire trilogy. Where to end? Ah, yes. I know where to end. I discovered this series over 2 years ago, and I have thoroughly enjoyed every minute I spent reading these amazing books. No other series of books or movies from any fictional genre has claimed my appreciation the way this trilogy has. To the Martin family, Mr. Russ Gordon, Anka Gabriella, and all those who poured their creative energy into bringing this amazing story to life, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for bringing fantasy lovers like me the truly phenomenal and invigorating experience in the story of Maggie Bennett. This book has truly earned its title as my favorite fantasy novel, and this series has shown its worth to be crowned my favorite trilogy of all time. Thank you all so much for watching. I absolutely cannot wait to continue making more videos like this, as I want to make more content related to awesome books like these and the art of writing as a whole. Until then, be your best artist, my friends. Be the light, enter the void, pierce the darkness. I'll see you next time.